एक भी है और अनेक भी। एक ऐसी टीम जहां कैप्टन यानी यूनियन के पास स्पेशल पावर्स है, लेकिन हर प्लेयर यानी स्टेट को अपना गेम खेलने की आजादी भी है।
बिल्कुल।
डिड यू नो कि हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मेकर्स ने जानबूझकर इंडिया को फेडरेशन ऑफ स्टेट्स की जगह यूनियन ऑफ स्टेट्स कहा? एवर वंडर्ड व्हाई?
ये एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है।
It seems like a small change, but that one word choice is probably the most important decision they made. आज हम इसी गुत्थी को सुलझाएंगे।
जरूर।
सोच लो, this is the most interesting puzzle in Indian polity. And if you love solving these kinds of knowledge-packed puzzles, तो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करना, लाइक बटन दबाना और नोटिफिकेशन बेल ऑन करना बिल्कुल मत भूलना। चलो शुरू करते हैं।
Absolutely. So what's our learning map for today?
We are going on a deep exploration of the nature of the federal system. Our broad micro theme is understanding India's unique federal structure.
First, we'll understand what Article 1 means by Union of States. It's more dramatic than it sounds.
Then we'll look at the essential features of a typical federal system, a sort of checklist to see if a country qualifies.
Uske baad, we'll unpack the unique and peculiar features of Indian federalism and see how we are so different from the American model. This is where the real fun begins.
And finally, we will explore concepts like quasi-federal and cooperative federalism to understand the ground reality. So let's get started. Okay, let's start at the very beginning. Article 1 of the Constitution. It sounds so simple, but it's packed with meaning.
Exactly. Chalo, let's dive into our first topic. India, a union of states.
So what's the short definition here?
The short definition is right there in the text. हमारे Constitution का Article 1(1) कहता है, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states.
Right.
Now this isn't just a name, it's a powerful declaration. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar ने explain किया था कि a phrase union of states was chosen very deliberately over federation of states for two very specific and powerful reasons.
Give us a real-life example to make this stick.
Think of it like a family versus a business partnership.
Okay.
एक business partnership बनती है agreement से, independent partners के बीच, है ना?
हाँ, बिल्कुल.
They can choose to dissolve the partnership if things don't work out. That's like a federation of states in the American sense.
Right.
But a family is different. Family members, यानी states, live together as one unit, the union. ये कोई deal या contract नहीं है जिसे members जब चाहें छोड़कर चले जाएं.
मतलब ये एक unbreakable bond है.
Exactly. It's an unbreakable bond. The units cannot secede. समझे?
That's a great way to put it. Let's get into the main discussion then.
Sure. Let's start with the introduction. Why was the word union used? इसमें इतना खास क्या है? This single word, sets the entire tone for the relationship between the center and the states in India. It is the bedrock of our country's integrity.
What's the background here? Why was this so important to them?
You have to remember the context. The constitution was being framed right after the horrific trauma of the partition of India.
Right.
देश बंट रहा था, princely states को मनाया जा रहा था ज्वाइन करने के लिए. तो a new nation's unity and integrity was the absolute #1 priority for the makers.
I see.
So Dr. Ambedkar wanted to make it crystal clear, right from the first sentence of the constitution, that this new entity was permanent and unbreakable.
Okay, so what is the core logic behind choosing union?
The core logic is twofold. And this is very important. First, the Indian Federation is not the result of an agreement among the states.
Okay.
Unlike the American Federation, jahan independent and sovereign states came together and agreed to form a country, India was already one single unit under the British. The country was divided into states or provinces for administrative convenience.
So the power flowed from the top down, not bottom up.
Precisely. The union did not come into being because the states created it. Rather, the states exist within the union.
And the second point?
The second point is the direct consequence of the first. The states have no right to secede.
मतलब अलग होने का अधिकार नहीं है.
Bilkul. Because the states didn't voluntarily join by signing an agreement, they have no power to unilaterally leave. The bond is indestructible. The federation is a union precisely because it is indissoluble. This was a direct message to any region or state that might have separatist ideas in the future.
What has been the real-world impact of this choice?
The impact is massive, and we see it even today. It's the constitutional basis for why no separatist movement is considered legal. The constitution simply does not permit secession.
Right.
In fact, things got even stricter later on. The 16th Constitutional Amendment of 1963 made it clear that advocating for secession is not protected under the freedom of speech and expression. That's how seriously our system takes the idea of an indestructible union.
So, what's the final conclusion for this section?
In conclusion, the phrase union of states is not just semantics. It is a profound statement that underlines the permanent, indestructible, and centralized nature of the Indian system. It prioritizes national integrity above state autonomy from the very first word.
Okay, let's pause here for some questions. My first one is, does using the word union mean that India is not a federation at all? It seems to, contradict the very idea.
Not at all. That's a very common misconception. The word union has been used in the constitutions of classic federations like the USA, Canada, and South Africa.
Oh, really?
Yes, the true nature of a political system comes from its actual provisions, the distribution of powers, the role of the judiciary, etc., not from the label it uses in its first article.
Then why didn't Dr. Ambedkar just use the word federation directly? It would have been simpler. Was there a specific reason to avoid it?
Yes, precisely to avoid confusion with the American model. He wanted to make it very clear that India was not a federation where sovereign states came together. He emphasized that in India, the union is the primary entity that created states for convenience, and therefore the union has the power to alter them as well, which is something we will discuss later.
Does this mean the states are just glorified municipalities, completely subordinate to the union?
Not subordinate, no. They have their own autonomous sphere of powers given to them by the Constitution itself. They have their own legislatures and governments. However, the system is designed so that in any conflict concerning the unity and integrity of the country, the union is definitely stronger and has the final say.
What if some states had refused to be part of this union back then?
That's a great historical question. The process of integrating the princely states was complex, involving persuasion, diplomacy, and sometimes force, as in the case of Hyderabad. But once a state became part of the territory of India under the Constitution, the door to exit was permanently locked. There was no opt-out clause.
So the word union is essentially a constitutional lock.
That is the perfect way to describe it. It's a lock on the integrity of the nation, and as Dr. Ambedkar intended, the key was thrown away.
Fantastic. Okay, let's try this.
Now pause and practice saying this part aloud. India is a union of states, which means the federation is not a result of an agreement among states, and therefore states have no right to secede.
Got it. So let's do a mini recap.
In short, the term union is a deliberate choice that emphasizes India's indestructible unity and integrity over the voluntary association of states.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. We are a union. But we also keep using the word federal. So the next logical question is, what makes any system federal in the first place? Is there like a universal test?
Yes, there is. And that brings us to our next topic, essential features of a federal polity.
So what's the short definition? What are we talking about here?
Basically, political scientists have a checklist of essential features that a country's constitution must have to be considered truly federal. There are 4 main pillars. If a system has these 4, it's federal in form. If it lacks them, it's unitary.
Can you give us a real-life example for this? An analogy, perhaps?
The best analogy is a cricket match.
Oh, I like that.
Think about it. You have 2 distinct teams playing on the field, the union team and the state team. That's dual government.
Right.
The entire match is governed by rule book that no one can change on their own. That's the supremacy of the Constitution.
Makes sense.
The rulebook clearly defines what the bowler does, what the batsman does, and what the fielders do. That's the distribution of powers.
Okay.
And finally, if there is any dispute, like an LBW appeal, you have an impartial umpire who makes the final decision based on the rulebook. That umpire is the independent judiciary with the final authority of courts.
I love that. An LBW appeal is a great metaphor for a center-state dispute. Okay, let's break this down in the main discussion.
Let's start with the introduction. We are now going to look at that 4-point checklist that political scientists use to classify a country as federal or unitary. Understanding this is the foundation for appreciating the unique genius of the Indian system.
And what's the background? Why do these features even matter?
These features are not just academic theories. They are crucial because they act as safeguards against the concentration of power. They put limits on government power and protect the rights of citizens by ensuring that no single entity, neither the center nor the state, can become all-powerful. It's a design for liberty.
Okay, let's get to the core logic. What are the 4 essentials?
Let's break them down. First, as the analogy suggested, is dual government or dual polity. This means you have one government for the entire country, which is the national or federal government, and then you have separate governments for each component state.
And the most crucial part.
The most crucial part here is that both of these governments get their authority directly from the Constitution. The state government is not a subordinate of the central government.
Second
is the distribution of powers. This is the heart of federalism. The Constitution must clearly divide the powers, legislative, executive, and financial, between the union and the states. This is done in our Constitution through the 3 lists in the 7th schedule: the union list, the state list, and the concurrent list.
And the third feature, the rule book.
Exactly. Third is the supremacy of the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It is above both the union and the state governments. Neither can violate its provisions. If a law is made that goes against the Constitution, it will be declared void. It's the ultimate rule book that everyone must obey.
And the final one, the role of the umpire.
Precisely. The 4th essential is the authority of courts. There must be an independent judiciary that acts as the guardian of the Constitution. This judiciary has the power to interpret the Constitution and to nullify any law or action, whether of the union or a state, that it finds to be unconstitutional. In India, this power is held by the Supreme Court and the High Courts.
So what's the real-world impact of having these 4 features?
The impact is profound. It means your state government can make laws on local issues like agriculture, local police, and public health. At the same time, the union government handles issues of national importance like defense, foreign affairs, and currency.
And for the citizen?
And if you, as a citizen, feel that either government has made a law that violates the constitution or your fundamental rights, you can go to the courts for justice.
So what's the conclusion here? Does India pass the test?
Yes, absolutely. The Indian constitution has all four of these essential features. We have a dual government, a clear distribution of powers, a supreme constitution, and an independent judiciary with the power of judicial review. This is why the Supreme Court of India has repeatedly stated in its judgments that the constitution is basically federal in form.
Crystal clear. Now for some cross-questioning. What's the real difference between a state in a federation and a powerful local body like a municipality in a unitary system? Both seem to have some powers.
That's an excellent and fundamental question. A state in a federation derives its power directly from the constitution. Its power is original and cannot be taken away by the central government at will.
Okay.
A municipality, on the other hand, gets its power from a law made by the state government. This power is delegated, not original. The state government can reduce, expand, or even take back those powers. The source of power is the key difference. Samjhe?
You talked about the supremacy of the constitution. How is that practically maintained? What stops Parliament from just changing the constitution to give itself more power?
Two things maintain it. First, the process for amending the key federal features of the constitution is rigid. It requires not just a special majority in Parliament, but also the ratification by at least half of the state legislatures.
And the second thing?
Second, the power of judicial review. The Supreme Court can strike down any constitutional amendment if it violates the basic structure of the Constitution, and federalism is part of that basic structure.
What happens if the union makes a law on a stateless subject like agriculture without any constitutional justification?
The Supreme Court can and will strike it down as unconstitutional. That's the authority of courts in action. It acts as the umpire, showing the red card to any player that goes outside their defined area of play. This is what maintains the federal balance.
In the cricket analogy, what if the umpire, the judiciary, is biased towards the union team?
That is the critical importance of having an independent judiciary. The Constitution has several provisions to ensure the judiciary's independence, such as security of tenure for judges and their salaries being charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. While the possibility of bias is a theoretical debate, the structural design is meant to keep the umpire impartial.
Does the distribution of powers ever change? Or are these lists set in stone?
They are not entirely set in stone, but changing them is very difficult, as it requires a constitutional amendment with states' consent. However, the system is also flexible. For instance, the Parliament can legislate on a state subject for a temporary period if the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution in the national interest. So there are some built-in flexibilities.
Okay, this gives us a solid foundation. Let's try the practice cue.
Okay, practice saying the four features aloud: dual government, distribution of powers, supremacy of the Constitution, and authority of courts.
And the quick recap.
In short, these four features are the essential pillars that create a balance of power between the center and the states, making a country truly federal.
All right, so we've established that India checks all the essential boxes to be called a federation. That's the textbook part. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Bilkul.
Indian federalism isn't a copy-paste of the American or Australian systems. It has some very unique twists, some peculiar features that make it one of a kind. Let's dive into these.
Absolutely. This is where we see the genius of our constitution makers. Let's start with the first peculiar feature. A. Mode of formation.
How are we formed differently?
The American Federation was formed when 13 independent colonies came together to create a new country. It was a process of unification of sovereign units.
Okay.
Indian federalism is the exact opposite. It was formed when a large, existing unitary country was broken down into autonomous units, the states, for administrative convenience. The process was one of division, not unification.
So we followed the Canadian model.
Exactly. We followed the Canadian model here. The provinces under British India were not sovereign entities. The Government of India Act 1935 created both the Federation and its units by one and the same act. The power flowed from top to bottom, from the center to the newly created provinces, not bottom to top like in the USA.
Okay. So a simple mini recap on this point.
In short, India's federalism was created by the division of a single unit, not by the union of multiple independent states.
Now, this different starting point must have consequences. How does this affect the position of our states?
It has massive consequences, which brings us to our second peculiar feature, B, position of the states in the Federation. Because our states were never sovereign to begin with, they were not given the same kind of powerful safeguards that American states enjoy. Let's look at the differences point by point.
Let's do it. What's the first major difference?
First is residuary powers. In the USA, any power not explicitly given to the national government automatically belongs to the states. This makes the states very powerful.
And in India?
In India, we did the opposite. Residuary powers, that is the power to make laws on subjects not mentioned in any of the three lists, belong to the Union Parliament. Article 248.
Kolna?
This is a major tilt towards a strong center.
What's the second difference?
Second, states having their own constitution. American states have their own separate constitutions which they can amend. In India, barring the special case of Jammu and Kashmir, which has now changed, no state has its own constitution. There is only one constitution for both the union and the states. This ensures uniformity.
That's a big one. What's third?
Third is the process of constitutional amendment. In America, amending the constitution is extremely difficult and requires the ratification of 3/4 of the states. In India, a large part of the constitution can be amended by the Union Parliament alone by a special majority. States are only consulted in a few specific matters that directly affect them.
And what's the most critical difference?
The most critical point, and this is a famous phrase you should remember, is that India is an indestructible union of destructible states.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
The USA is an indestructible union of indestructible states. This means that in America, neither can the union be broken, nor can the federal government change the boundaries of a state without that state's consent.
And in India?
In India, the union is indestructible. No state can secede. But the states themselves are destructible. Under Article 3 of the Constitution, our parliament can, by a simple majority, change the boundaries of any state, increase or decrease its area, or even create a new state out of the territory of existing states.
Without their consent?
Yes, and it does not need the consent of the concerned state. It only needs to ask for their view. This is exactly how states like Telangana, Jharkhand, and Uttarakhand were created. The parliament redrew the map of India.
Wow. And the final point of difference?
Finally, there is no equality of state representation. In the American Senate, every state, big or small, gets 2 seats. California, with a huge population, and Rhode Island, with a small one, have equal power. This is the principle of equality of states.
And our Rajya Sabha?
In our Rajya Sabha, the Council of States, representation is based on population. Uttar Pradesh has 31 seats, while a small state like Goa has only 1. So, the principle of state equality is not followed here.
This is a lot to unpack. Let's do some cross-questioning on this. That point about destructible states is fascinating. Doesn't this completely undermine federalism and make the system unitary in practice?
It is, without a doubt, the most powerful unitary feature of our constitution. It gives the union immense power to redraw the political map of the country. The framers felt this was necessary to accommodate linguistic and administrative reorganization demands without threatening the unity of the country. It's a tool for flexibility, but it definitely makes the center very, very strong.
Why did the makers choose this path of unequal representation in the Rajya Sabha? It seems to go against the federal spirit.
The idea was to strike a balance between the federal principle, where states are represented, and the democratic principle, where people are represented. The Constituent Assembly felt it would be undemocratic to give a state with a tiny population the same legislative power as a state with a massive population. It's a pragmatic compromise.
If Parliament can amend most of the Constitution alone, what stops it from removing federalism altogether?
That's where the Supreme Court's basic structure doctrine comes in. The court has ruled that while Parliament can amend the Constitution, it cannot destroy its basic features. Federalism has been declared a basic feature. So while Parliament can change many things, it cannot make India a unitary state. That core is protected by the judiciary.
Why do you think American states were given residuary powers but Indian states weren't?
It goes back to the mode of formation. In America, the states were sovereign entities that were giving up some of their powers to the new federal government. So they kept everything they didn't explicitly give away. In India, the center was the primary entity distributing power to the states for good governance. So the center kept everything that wasn't explicitly given away. The default position of power is different.
Is there any other country that has this indestructible union of destructible states feature?
It is a very unique feature. While many federal countries have provisions for creating new states, the ease with which the Indian Parliament can do it under Article 3 with just a simple majority and without the consent of the state is quite rare. It reflects the specific needs and anxieties of the Indian context at the time of its framing.
Okay, that's a lot of crucial information. A quick recap for this section.
In short, unlike the US model, Indian states are not sovereign. Their very existence can be altered by the union, and they do not have equal representation or rights within the federal structure.
Now let's move to the third major peculiar feature, which is about how our government actually works on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly, this is topic C, nature of the polity. In America, almost everything is dual. Dual citizenship, dual court systems, dual civil services. India deliberately chose a single integrated system to promote national unity.
Let's break this down. What's the first element of the single system?
First is single citizenship. In India, you are a citizen of India only. You're not a citizen of Maharashtra or Punjab. This single citizenship promotes a unified national identity. In the USA, you have dual citizenship. You are a citizen of your state and also of the USA.
Second,
we have integrated public services. We have the All India services like the IS and IPS. These officers are recruited and trained by the union government, but they serve in both the center and the states. This ensures a uniform standard of administration across the country and gives the center a significant presence in state administration.
and what about the courts?
That's the third point, an integrated judiciary. This is a very big difference. We have a single unified pyramid of courts. The Supreme Court is at the top, followed by the high courts, and then the lower courts. This single system enforces both union and state laws. In America, there is a separate federal judiciary for federal laws and separate state judiciaries for state laws.
Okay, now for the feature you called a killer feature earlier.
Yes, the fourth point. Emergency provisions. During a national emergency, Article 352, or when President's rule is imposed on a state, Article 356, our federal system can practically transform into a unitary one.
Unitary.
Yes. The normal distribution of powers is suspended, and the Union Parliament can make laws on any subject in the state list and give any executive direction to the states.
So the whole structure can just change overnight.
Essentially. Yes. And finally, there's a strong central bias even in normal times. Even when there is no emergency, the Union has significant control. For example, under Article 249, Parliament can make a law on a state subject if the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution saying it is in the national interest. And of course, the controversial Article 356, President's Rule, allows the centre to dismiss a state government.
Let's do some questions. This single system approach, what was the primary motivation behind it? Was it just about control?
The main idea was efficiency and unity. The framers wanted to avoid the complexity, the conflicts, and the huge expense of maintaining dual systems of everything. More importantly, after the trauma of partition, they wanted to actively promote a single national identity over narrow regional identities to hold this incredibly diverse country together.
But isn't Article 356, President's Rule, a direct threat to the spirit of federalism? It seems like a weapon the centre can use against states ruled by opposition parties.
It is, without a doubt, the most controversial feature of our constitution. It was intended as a last resort for a complete breakdown of constitutional machinery in a state. However, critics argue it has often been misused for political reasons.
But is there any check?
Yes, the Supreme Court, in the landmark SR Bombay case, put some important checks and balances on its misuse, making it harder for the centre to impose it arbitrarily.
An All India service officer works for a state government, but their ultimate boss is the union, which is the only authority that can remove them. Isn't that a clear conflict of interest?
It's designed that way to ensure impartiality. The idea is that these senior officers can give advice and implement policies without fear of local political pressure or victimization. Their ultimate loyalty is meant to be to the Constitution of India, not a particular state government, and the union's oversight is meant to protect that independence.
This integrated judiciary model, does it have any disadvantages compared to the American dual system?
The main advantage is uniformity in law and judicial interpretation. However, a potential disadvantage is that the single system can be heavily overburdened. A case can travel all the way from a local court to the Supreme Court, leading to massive delays, which is a problem we face in India.
So if you combine all these features, emergency powers, all India services, the power to change state boundaries, it seems the states are on a very tight leash.
That's a fair assessment. The system is designed with a very strong bias towards the center. The leash is real, but the states also have significant autonomy in their own domain. The constant tension between these two is the story of Indian federalism.
Great discussion. Let's do the practice cue.
Practice saying this. Indian polity is integrated with single citizenship, a single judiciary, and all India services, and it can become fully unitary during emergencies.
And the mini recap?
In short, India's political structure is deliberately designed for national unity and central strength, unlike the classic dual polity of the USA.
Okay. After looking at all these features, a strong center, destructible states, single citizenship, emergency powers, one has to ask the big question, are we really a federation? This has led to a huge debate among experts.
It has. And this brings us to our final topic. A critique of the federal system. Is India quasi-federal?
Right. I've heard this term a lot. What does quasi-federal mean?
The term was famously coined by the scholar K.C. Weir. After looking at all these strong unitary or non-federal features in our constitution, he described India as quasi-federal.
And what was his definition?
He gave a very famous definition. He said India is a unitary state with subsidiary federal features rather than a federal state with subsidiary unitary features. Basically, he saw it as more unitary than federal.
That sounds like a big criticism. Let's get into the main discussion on this.
Right. For the introduction, so what is India really? Is it fully federal, quasi-federal, or something else entirely? This isn't just an academic debate. It has real consequences for how power is shared between the union and the states.
What's the background of this debate? Why does this label matter so much?
The label matters because it defines the nature of union-state relations. If you believe India is quasi-federal, then the union's dominance and control seem justified and part of the design. But if you believe India is truly federal, then state autonomy becomes a more important principle, and any encroachment by the center is seen as a violation of the federal spirit.
Okay, let's explore the core logic of the different viewpoints.
There are a few key perspectives. First is the quasi-federal view. As we discussed, scholars like K.C. Weir focused on the strong central bias, the sweeping emergency powers, and Parliament's power to reorganize states, and they concluded that this cannot be called a pure federation in the classic sense.
What was the counter-argument to this?
The counter-argument is the sui generis view. Sui generis is a Latin term that means in a class of its own, or unique. Other experts, like Granville Austin, argued that it's a mistake to compare India to the American model. They said India's federalism is unique, designed for the specific needs of a highly diverse and large country.
So what's a better description?
A better description, they argued, is cooperative federalism.
Cooperative federalism. What does that mean?
This concept says that the union and the states are not competitors but partners in the project of national development. They are supposed to cooperate with each other. The center is seen as the senior partner that guides, helps, and coordinates with the states. Institutions like the Niti Aayog, which replace the Planning Commission, and the interstate councils are examples of this cooperative structure.
What's a good real-world impact or example of this cooperation?
The biggest recent example is the goods and services tax. This was a massive tax reform that required both the union and all the states to come together and create a single tax system. It was made possible by the GST Council, where the union and the states jointly make decisions. This is cooperative federalism in action.
So what's the final conclusion? Where did the debate settle?
The Supreme Court, in the SR Bombay case, settled this debate to a large extent. The court gave a powerful statement saying, federalism in the Indian Constitution is not a matter of administrative convenience, but one of principle.
So it is federal.
Yes. The court affirmed that India is federal, period. It's a basic feature of the Constitution. However, it's a unique Indian version of federalism, tailored to our specific needs.
That's a very definitive statement from the court. Okay, let's get into some questions. Is the term quasi-federal a negative or insulting term?
Not necessarily. From a purely academic, political science perspective, it's a descriptive term. But in the Indian political context, it was often seen as a term that undermined the constitutional status and autonomy of the states. That's why the term cooperative federalism is now officially preferred, as it emphasizes partnership and mutual respect.
But does this cooperative federalism mean that states end up losing their autonomy?
That is the single biggest criticism of this model. Critics argue that cooperation often becomes coercion. Through financial instruments like grants and powerful bodies like Niti Aayog, the union can end up dictating policies to the states, even on subjects in the state list. Because states are so dependent on the center for funds, their autonomy can be compromised. It's a very fine and difficult balance to maintain.
So which description do you think is the most accurate for India?
I think Dr. Ambedkar's own words during the Constituent Assembly debates are the best description. He said our system is both unitary as well as federal according to the requirements of time and circumstances.
So it's flexible.
Exactly. It's a flexible, pragmatic, and dynamic system, designed to be federal in normal times, but unitary in times of crisis.
So it's like a chameleon. It can change its nature based on the situation.
Exactly. It's a system designed for resilience and adaptability, which is perhaps its greatest strength. It prioritizes survival and unity above rigid ideological purity.
One last question. Is this trend towards cooperation increasing or decreasing in recent years?
The trend is definitely towards more cooperation, or what some call centralization. With initiatives like GST, centrally sponsored schemes for health, education, and sanitation, the role of the union in guiding national policy has significantly increased. The debate is whether this is making the country stronger or weakening the states.
This has been a very nuanced discussion. Let's do the practice cue.
Let's practice this. India's system is often called quasi-federal due to its strong center, but a better term is cooperative federalism, which emphasizes partnership between the union and states.
And the final mini recap.
In short, while India has strong unitary features, it's best understood as a unique, cooperative, and highly flexible federal system, designed specifically for India's needs of maintaining unity in diversity.
So after that incredibly deep exploration, what have we learned today? Let's do a final quick recap.
Our broad micro-theme was understanding India's unique federal structure.
We started with the term Union of States in Article 1, a powerful choice that highlights India's indestructible unity and makes it clear that no state has a right to secede. It's a constitutional lock.
Then we saw that India has all the four essential features of a federation: dual government, a clear division of powers, a supreme constitution, and an independent judiciary acting as an umpire. So on paper, it passes the test.
But then we unpack the peculiar features that make our system so unique. A top-down formation, the concept of an indestructible union of destructible states, unequal representation for states, and a single integrated polity with features like single citizenship and an integrated judiciary.
And finally, we moved beyond the academic label of quasi-federal to understand India as a case of cooperative federalism, a flexible, adaptable system that can be both federal and unitary as needed, emphasizing partnership in nation building.
Excellent. Now for a quick check to see how much has been absorbed. Here are a few questions to think about.
Number 1. एक सेंटेंस में यूनियन ऑफ स्टेट्स और फेडरेशन ऑफ स्टेट्स का डिफरेंस बताओ.
2. फेडरेशन के 4 essential features क्या हैं?
3. इंडिया को इंडिस्ट्रक्टिबल यूनियन ऑफ डिस्ट्रक्टिबल स्टेट्स क्यों कहते हैं?
4.
हमारे फेडरल सिस्टम में कोई एक यूनिटरी फीचर का एग्जांपल दो. 5. केसी वेयर का क्वाजी फेडरलिज्म से क्या मतलब था?
And 6. कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म को एक सिंपल एनालॉजी से समझाओ.
And here's a small challenge for you. Try to explain to a friend or family member in just 1 minute the top 3 ways Indian federalism is different from American federalism. Rehearse presenting this out loud. देखो कितना याद रहा.
And now for a final thought to leave you with.
Here's something to mull over. जैसे जैसे जीएसटी, नीति आयोग और सेंट्रली स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम्स बढ़ रही हैं, क्या कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म धीरे धीरे कोअर्सिव फेडरलिज्म में बदल रहा है, जहां स्टेट्स के पास यूनियन की बात मानने के अलावा कोई ऑप्शन नहीं है?
और
या फिर अ डाइवर्स कंट्री लाइक इंडिया को एक साथ आगे ले जाने का यही एक प्रैक्टिकल तरीका है? इज इट अ बग और इज इट अ फीचर? इस पर सोचना जरूर।
एंड विद दैट प्रोवोकेटिव थॉट वी रैप अप दिस डीप डाइव। अगर आपको ये डिस्कशन पसंद आया तो प्लीज इसे शेयर कीजिए। आपके कमेंट्स हमारे लिए बहुत वैल्यूएबल है, सो लेट अस नो व्हाट यू थिंक। और हाँ, फॉर मोर सच इंसाइटफुल एक्सप्लोरेशंस सब्सक्राइब करना मत भूलना। सी यू नेक्स्ट टाइम।